Well, hello, all you Facebook patchwork friends. We have missed seeing you so much that we decided we'd go live today. Now, for those of you who are familiar with live, it means anything can happen. I mean, you know how we've talked about a squirrel can go by, a plane can go overhead and we could lose you altogether, or I could freeze like I did on that Accuquilt video this week if you watched us. But we're going to give it a shot, and today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite quilts in the Spikes and Peaks book. I know I say that on every one of them, but the Titanic quilt and that project is truly one of my favorites because of the way it all came about. Now, behind me, you're seeing a picture of the quilt that is actually the full Titanic quilt. And then to the, you're also seeing a picture of the table runner. So I'm going to talk a little bit about them, but let's talk about the Titanic block itself. Now, if you look at the cover of this book that we're going to show you, that is really, when I started doing some research on this, and I'll tell you how it all came about. If you saw the Leonardo and the Kate version of the Titanic, this is the truth. I went with my husband to see the movie, and we rarely went to a movie. I didn't want to go see it because I already knew how it ended. So what's the point? But nonetheless, we went, and I was a little bored till got about halfway through when Leonardo came down or up the staircase, and there was the patchwork floor. Truly, I almost came up out of my seat and went, patchwork block. And from that point, I was mesmerized by the rest of the movie. Even though I knew the boat was going to sink, I still was thrilled. When we left the movie, we went to a bookstore, and I bought that book that you see about the Titanic because I had known about this block for years, but had no clue that it did originate that early in a flooring. And so for those of you who like a little bit of patchwork history, one of the things we know is so many of the original tile work floors from 300, 400, and 500 years ago are now patchwork designs. So every time I see this block, I like to reference it as the Titanic block, even though it has loads of different names. So regardless of what you're going to call it today, we're going to call it the Titanic block. Now, for those of you who watched a little early, you saw we did some previews. We thought that might be fun. You just wouldn't look at a clock running. And that was the segment about how to do that. It's sometimes referenced as a square in a square. It's called a square on point. It's got loads and loads of names, but it's the center of the Titanic block. So let's look at the block itself. Now, in the little video that previewed earlier, you can also follow up and see that. It'll be on the description below when this video posts later on YouTube, and it will also be on Facebook. And there's our block. That is the exact block now that you might know as different names. So as you look at the block, I've already covered with you in this preview that we shared with you how to do it with rulers and calculations. But what our goal is here is to cover Accuquilt as well. So as you look at this diagram, we're using die 3, 5, 6, 13, and 14 are the dies that we will be using you will be using when you make this. Now, as you look at the block, the corner triangles are your largest die, so they're going to be die 3. That little center unit is your die 5 and 6, the center square being 6 that's on point, the corners being 5, and then your spiky elements are your dies 13 and 14. We've already showed you how we sew them. We've already showed you how we cut them. So let's just kind of take a look at the quilt. Now, the Titanic block is the one that you see. Both of the pictures that you see on screen and the little one on the right, this small one that's showing right now, we got a lot going on here. This one right here, that's the one that I just shared for the first time. I just made this little quilt, and I'll kind of hold it up too, and you can see it two ways. This, I did the block with the 4-inch cube. Now, those of you who use Accuquilt already know the die numbers never change. The only thing that changes is the size of the die. So in the book, I used a different die because in the book, it's a 12-inch block and it's a 3-patch. So I used the 8-inch cube to make the larger one, and I used the 4-inch cube to make the baby. So as we look at the baby and the large one, and I'll kind of lay them down on the table, you can see clearly this baby is half the size of the large one. The sewing was identical. The cutting was identical. I just used a different size cube to execute each one of them. Now, for those of you who watched the Accuquilt release of their new side setting triangles, the little one I just did, and I used the side set triangle for, even though I made this now with a 4-inch cube, you have to understand that the 4-inch cube yielded a 6-inch block. So when I chose my side sets, I had to go to the 6-inch side set. Now, if you owned one of the earlier rulers, the side set triangle ruler, you could also do it, but for those of you who've used that method, you know that it overcuts. And I am telling you, even though I err to the side of whatever element I've got to work with, this went together like a charm, even though I know how to cut with rulers and I know how to cut traditional. For those of you who own Accuquilt or are contemplating owning Accuquilt, I will tell you the accuracy factor of it is going to be really tough to beat. So when you're putting this together, one of the things that you want to think about, which size block do you want? If you're using the book, gosh, I just had a little mini, I don't know what I was going to say, the little table runner, I did it with the 12. It is a 12-inch block in the book. In the little one, it is the 4-inch block. Now, if you look at the full quilt that's behind me on the wall, that one in the book is actually a 9-inch block. So in order to do that one, I would use the 6-inch cube because it's a 3-patch block, 3, 6, 9, 3, the largest unit in the cube is a 3-inch from the 6-inch cube. So while I know it's a little daunting for you guys, I think one of our goals was to take the Spikes and Peaks book, cover, the book clearly states how to use it with the rulers, but we've tried to cover even some traditional calculations and also how to add Accuquilt into your little library. Now there's one little fun thing. Brian's got a picture pulled up in that corner. See that miter that lives in the corner of the main quilt? Now that's also in the book and it's clearly stated how I use it. I bet there's somebody watching this that says I would just rather poke myself with a pen than I would to use to do a mitered border. Let me tell you folks, this is a cheater miter. I kind of named it that. All that is a half square triangle. So if I made my border 4 inches, then I still cut whatever size border, you got to have the same size triangle cut out of that. And all I did was have a dark blue and a light half square triangle. I sewed them together and then I just put it on like a cornerstone. So let's just say I put the navy on the left side and then I came back and put the white on the top and bottom, then the top and bottom would have cornerstones. But those cornerstones are half square triangles. When this quilt is done, you're about the only person that's ever going to know that it was actually done with a half square triangle and not a true miter. The only thing I would tell you when you're doing this, be very careful because it's easy. If you're using a solid fabric, that seam line is going to show a little bit more. If you use a busy fabric, we tried to zoom in on this to show you what this looked like and couldn't get tight enough for you to spot that there's a north-south line in the white and an east-west line in that navy. We couldn't get tight enough. So that proves that this is the same. And then in the little skinny first border, I did the exact thing, but I reversed the colors. So it looks like I worked a whole lot harder than I did to get a cute little project. So, Brian, are there any questions? Has anybody got a burning question? We always like to know that when it's on Facebook. No, yeah, be sure if there's something you want to know, because we're going to do this pretty short and sweet because we have missed being with you, and we wanted to be sure that we didn't lose any continuity in working on this. And because of the summer and life changing and all of that stuff, we're just trying to keep up to speed with you, but we also want you to know that we have a couple of other videos planned to finish this book. And for those of you that own the More Smart Piecing DVD, and you don't perhaps own the Spikes and Peaks book, the pattern for the Titanic quilt itself, the large Titanic quilt, lives as a PDF in that video. So you can print it out. Now, it doesn't have the cut how many and all of that, but it was just a little video we shared at that time. The video, I mean, obviously, as you all know, the rulers are discontinued. However, if you're sitting on those and or you have that, that's another great way to pull that into play. So if you've shopped and you have your dies, regardless of the size that you have of your cube, you can execute this pattern. If you look at the table runner, the larger table runner, and you don't like the fact that I've got that at a point, the only thing you would do is you would just put your half square triangles that would finish it out. So if you were using the new Accuquilt side set die, your corner is included in that. So the only thing you would have to do is to say, gosh, I've got this size cube, this is what I'm going to do, and you're set to go. That's it. We weren't going to sew this time because we've given you the videos of how to do all of this. And I suppose, Brian, if they don't have any questions, we're just going to go do our barn work or something like that. And I will monitor when this post, Brian will get it loaded up on YouTube and everything with the links below. And I will monitor that. So if there is any questions at all that pop up into your head, please let us know. And we'd love to still see some pictures. Some of you are posting, but I also know some of you are back to normal life, as normal as it can be in this economic situation.